What we saw with hair loss was imbalance between supply for funding but demand for new solutions. And so we created a DAO. In our case, it's a Discord server where everybody who's really passionate about hair loss can pretty much talk. So the hair token is our governance token of the DAO. It's one token, one vote. So the decisions could be, do you want to fund X study or Y study? Do we want to even create a telehealth? It's all determined by the hair token and the voting on that.
So we take probiotic, safe, edible bacteria, and then we engineer them to express some protein or enzyme that we know will have some beneficial function for you. Genetically engineered probiotics. Every bottle and box of ZBiotics is labeled proudly GMO. We really lean into the fact that genetic engineering is what makes the products do what they do. That was really kind of like the core of who we are.
I think what a lot of scientists fear the most, commercialization, right? Like that dirty word of like, okay, yeah, we got great science. Now we actually have to make money. The dirty money word, it's like, how could you possibly imagine making dirty money off of these beautiful scientific inventions, right?
So we created the brand, the packaging, we launched the product without any expertise in how to launch a product. Our website crashed the first day. Our product, we realized that the first manufacturer that we chose didn't pass the quality control, so we could not ship our product. It was like a nightmare.
Hi, everyone. I'm Ryan, your host for DeSci Pilled. We're really excited to have three incredible guests. I will let them introduce themselves. Just as a quick reminder, because we cover the interface of crypto and science, this is never financial nor medical advice. Andrew, we were just having a conversation just now about HairDAO. Could you tell us a little bit about HairDAO and really what inspired you? What was the problem that you were looking to solve?
Yeah, totally. So Andrew, co-founder of HairDAO, my co-founder, we actually went to high school together. He started losing his hair in high school. Everybody called him Patches, the whole neighbor, like all the kids, we thought this was hilarious. And then my freshman year of college, I started losing my hair. So it was like immediate karma. Waking up, seeing big clumps of hair on the pillow. And I kind of realized like that how sort of profoundly, hair loss sort of impacts you. For me, it was sort of like my first coming face to face with my own aging. You know, I've since like used a lot of treatments. I got a hair transplant as well. So like that's why my hair looks as full as it does currly.
I was going to say it's very radiant. It's
yes,
very radiant.
Yeah. I know people are like, what is he talking about? But yeah, I think that experience when I first started looking into like, okay, what can I do about this hair loss? I realized how poor the current solution set was. And so, myself, my co-founder, we were in crypto. We were both suffering from hair loss. And I think when we saw the beginnings of DeSci, we realized that, a DeSci DAO, a bio DAO could be a really good way to sort of correct a lot of the misalignment in the hair loss space to ultimately develop these new drugs. And we can talk about that misalignment later, but,
okay,
yeah.
I mean, that's exciting. And I know a lot of people are like, wait, HairDAO, DeSci, we're going to talk about all the subjects, decentralized science. So we have a lot of listeners that are either scientists or are scientist entrepreneurs or crypto people. And so we have a whole range of different people that are listening. And so, Carolina, do you want to talk about like the problem that you're solving and just tell us a little bit of the backstory of OneSkin?
Yeah. So thanks for having me. I'm Carolina, one of the co-founders and the CEO of OneSkin. Our story of Ryan goes way back into 2016. So I was in Brazil presenting my biotech company, and someone saw our presentation, said, you should go to San Francisco. You need to work with Ryan in the bio. And so we applied. And initially, when we came to IndieBio, our approach was to use our expertise of growing human skins in the lab to test the efficacy of anti-aging products that were in the market. And really fast, we realized that all of these products that were claiming to be anti-aging, they were not targeting aging itself. They were trying to make your skin to look younger, but without addressing the fundamental mechanisms that are driving aging. And what we also found is that a lot of these products were actually harming your skin instead of really delivering benefits. And so we saw an opportunity of developing something that would address the cellular drivers of aging. And we decided to shift our approach to focus on finding new molecules, more specifically peptides, that could address the accumulation of aging cells in the skin, also called senescent cells or zombie cells. And we founded this new peptide called OS1, and we could measure that this peptide can actually reverse the age of the skin. So it's the first ingredient that's validated to biologically reverse the age of the skin. And once we found this peptide, we decided to bring it to the market ourselves and create a skincare longevity brand that is mainly focused on improving the health of your skin and consequently improves your appearance and your overall health as well. So,
and Carolina, I was going to say that was very brave too, right? At the time you were all scientists, PhD scientists, and you were bringing consumer product to market. Like I remember that journey, and it was like, wow. I remember the thrills. It was hard, right? It was really, really hard.
It was very hard. You saw the beginning, a lot of, the ups and downs, more downs than ups. But I think one of the things that we realized like really early on is that this longevity field would become mainstream, and there were a lot of initiatives in targeting different age-related diseases, but no one was looking into the skin, which is your largest organ. So, and skin is kind of the first application that we could already see these advances in longevity being translated. And so I think we had this insight that maybe other, people in the field didn't have. And today, 9 years later, we are here with a product that has got a lot of traction and a lot of great scientific validation.
And they say the first decade's the hardest, right? In entrepreneurship, it's like the gray hairs and the loss of hair, Andrew. It happens over. So we become more and more interested in hair treatments and longevity treatments too. And so, and Carolina, it was you and a group of PhD scientists, right? Like all of your co-founders were PhD scientists. I think this is where it was not just a skincare brand; it was a science brand that became a consumer brand.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. Like I myself, I hold a PhD. My three other co-founders also, we met in when we were doing our PhDs in the same lab back in Brazil. So this was a company founded by PhDs that want to translate the science. And we never thought that we would be creating a product or a skincare brand. Like our goal was really to use science to help address a major problem in human health. And that happened to, the first application for these discoveries is in skin, but our passion was always like impacting, people's health in a more significant way. But it totally science, research led, turned into like a consumer longevity product today.
Yeah. Which kind of leads us to, and there's actually some other interesting links. So after ZBio, one of my venture partners, Barbara from Babel Ventures, who was actually, Carolina, your roommate, right?
Yeah.
She was your roommate at the time or around the time, told me about this cool company coming out of Y Combinator, ZBiotics, right? And so she was like, we have to look at ZBiotics, like they're doing cool stuff. And I looked at it and I was like, what is this? This is incredible, right? Like GMO bacteria, got to meet Zack, right? And we did invest. We did back you, Zack, back then in the early, I guess that's like kind of pre-seed-ish days.
I think it was like 2018 or something. Yeah.
2018, right? And so, you blew me away. Your vision blew me away. So why don't you tell us about ZBiotics and like the mission that you're on, what you're doing today with consumer products, but then also what's the bigger mission?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll just say that, Carolina, like it deeply resonates with me, kind of the idea of like, how do I take this science experiment, right? It was a PhD in microbiology and like all my training is around like the bench work, but then having this need or this desire to translate that to something that has an impact in the world. And I think there were sort of like two things that really motivated kind of what ZBiotics would become. And the first was this idea, right? So yeah, as you said, Ryan, genetically engineered probiotics. So we take probiotic, safe edible bacteria, and then we engineer them to express some protein or enzyme that we know will have some beneficial function for you, right? So you take these probiotics and they're these bacteria that are just kind of laying around, and we know they're safe to eat. They're the leftovers of the dairy industry usually. And we say like, hey, like it's performing all these functions. We hope that some of them might tangentially kind of help you in some undefinable way. And we say like, well, look, like what we have here is something that's really incredible. This bacteria is like a protein factory. And we can just engineer it. In addition to all the other stuff it's naturally normally doing, we can have it do one extra thing that we can just like lay over the top. And that one extra thing we know will be beneficial to you. And that seemed like a really obvious low-hanging fruit way to impact human health. And so I was surprised looking around that there really weren't a lot of people working on that. And then I'd say the other kind of thing to layer into what would kind of become ZBiotics was that at the same time, I also saw that a lot of, we've seen a lot of improvement in the last, like a hyper acceleration in the capabilities in terms of biotechnology in the last like 15 years. But a lot of companies that were capable of doing it were very afraid of leaning into that because of sort of like the trend that like the Monsantos of the world had set before with genetic engineering and GMOs. And so what I saw was a lot of companies with the capabilities that were sort of bending over backwards to make sure their products were like non-GMO, because unfortunately the technology had been conflated with a few kind of like bad examples of its application. And so to me as a scientist, I was really frustrated because it's like, look, this is just a technology, and the technology could be used to make good or bad products. And so I really wanted, and I could go on Facebook till I'm blue in the face and try and explain that to people and never get anywhere, right? But then I thought, well, if we make really great products with genetic engineering and we're transparent about the fact that we use genetic engineering, and we explain how we do it and why we do it, and we explain what the benefit to you is by us doing that, then ideally we could sort of like elevate this conversation above good or bad into something more reasonable and rational and nuanced. And so because of that, I really wanted to make products for consumers, like for people who were shopping at the grocery store, not people who were sick and needed a drug, because nobody cares that human insulin is made with GMOs, right? Like, because you need it. And so there's no kind of choices or decisions being made. So I really wanted something that people could choose, and I wanted to impact people's health in everyday sort of ways. And so putting those two kind of pieces together, it was like, okay, well, I want to engineer probiotics, and I want to do it for kind of like everyday problems that people are dealing with, that they can choose our product. They have the opportunity to choose our products. And then we'll be super transparent about the fact that we use genetic engineering. Like, so every bottle and box of ZBiotics is labeled proudly GMO. And we really lean into the fact that genetic engineering is what makes the products do what they do. And that was really kind of like the core of who we are. And so then it's sort of like I have
right there on the top, right there on the top. So
right.
let me see if I can put it in front of the camera. Proudly engineered GMO.
Yeah, that was proudly genetically engineered, and then each bottle says proudly GMO. They're small bottles,
nice.
So
very nice.
And so then the idea of like what are we gonna apply this technology to? And in the early days as a scientist who wasn't thinking about, like, who wasn't trained in sort of like consumers and marketing and things like that I had a lot of, I think, good ideas scientifically that objectively were bad business applications of the tech. It's pitched a lot of things that a lot of gloss over eyes, a lot of things that people didn't really care about, like radiation exposure and things like that. And then I sort of like, the first time I pitched our first product is called pre-alcohol, and you take this product before you drink alcohol, and it's engineered to express an enzyme that breaks down the byproduct of alcohol called acetaldehyde that makes you feel not so great the day after drinking. And the first time I pitched that idea, it was a joke. I was like, we could, just to show that we could do anything. I was like, we could do all kinds of stuff. And I listed off like 10 things. I was like, we could even make you feel better the day after drinking. And I just saw people's eyes like light up for the first time I'd ever pitched the technology. And it was like, oh, like, I get it now. People actually care about that. They understand that. It's interesting. And so that started moving up the list. And then that ended up being our flagship product for the tech. And then since then, we've launched a second product that has a different function. But ultimately, the bigger vision is building a whole platform of probiotics is like kind of 2.0 of probiotics that are engineered for specific use cases and specific benefits for the user.
And Zach, I was just going to add, I remember seeing some of the reviews for the ZBiotics product, like the pre-alcohol, and people were like obsessed with this product, right? Because there were a lot of people that would have like, it's called Asian glow. I don't know if that's PC or not, but like, it was a real problem. A lot of people had when they'd go out to drink. They wanted to go out to drink and be social, but they were worried about it. And I mean, there were people who were obsessed with the product. I saw it in the reviews. They were like, I would talk to some people in Silicon Valley, and they were like, oh, I buy tons of this product and I drink it before on the weekends. I drink lots of it. And I was like, really? Okay. It was kind of wild. It kind of blew my mind.
It was one of these where I think, people just, one of the things we realized in the early days when we were pitching a product was like heavy skepticism from everybody, right? Because I think, and there was a few things that went into that, but one of them was just that there's so much snake oil out there, and I think that none of it's worked, and everybody just assumed that this was like an unsolvable problem, right? And so then when we built something that was really meant to address the underlying biochemistry, people sort of like, I don't know, I've heard a lot of these stories, but I don't know. But then they try it and it would work, and they'd be like, holy crap, like that's, and so I think it was this like so low on the expectations and so skeptical. But then when we could deliver, I think that generated a lot of excitement for people trying the product. And so, yeah, so you see people be like, wow, now, like, because I think I've certainly experienced as I've gotten older, I think everybody does, right? Is you kind of like move out of your 20s and your 30s and out of your 30s and your 40s, like it gets a couple of glasses of wine or something can really kind of mess up your next day. And yeah, we're all healthy people here, right? Like I'm sure we all have our health routines. Like we want to make our morning workouts, whatever. And that's what our customers feel like. They're like, hey, like I want to be able to enjoy like a couple of glasses of wine or socialize or whatever, or go out for a happy hour or a wedding or whatever it might be, and then still be able to maintain my healthy habits and routines. And so the fact that they could do both of those things, I think was just totally like a game changer for people. And it generated a lot of excitement.
And Zach, I was going to say, and it worked, right? And I think that the three of you have shown that you can develop real science-based products, and amongst the sea of CPG, consumer packaged goods, you can still differentiate with science. And I think that's one of the hardest things in this category. It's not snake oil, it's real science by real scientists. And so I kind of want to link in kind of the unusual aspect of DeSci. So Andrew, HairDAO, right? So HairDAO, you're there like, okay, great. I want to solve this problem. I'm going to start a science DAO, right? Like what is that? For those of us that, are familiar with it, great. But like, there's a lot of people that just don't know anything about DeSci, science DAO. So tell us about that journey. And then eventually turning that into product, and then we'll start the product part of the journey, which I think is going to be really interesting for scientists who want to build, whether it's a DeSci DAO or a biotech company that's really focused on the consumer space.
Totally. Yeah. So I think like first and foremost, what DeSci and like looking at other BioDAOs sort of tipped us off to was, first of all, like why does a condition like androgenetic alopecia receive such little funding in the early stages of research? And so sort of what we realized was, one, it's not covered by insurance. Two, it's classified by the NIH as a cosmetic condition. So what that's resulted in is, and we've pulled from various databases, but what that's resulted in is pretty much up until we came around, there's only $5 million of early stage R&D for androgenetic alopecia globally. So, and then if you sort of layer on top of that, the fact that the people who are allocating it are like part of the department of like musculoskeletal and like arthritis. So then assume that 5 million is like super poorly allocated by people who are barely really thinking about hair loss. So then you could attribute, okay, maybe that's like really more like 2 million of well allocated capital. So we kind of realized, okay, and crypto is probably one of its strongest, I would say, like asset is its ability to align incentives, via like, with a community, a global community, particularly an internet community. And so what we saw with hair loss was, very little supply in terms of funding for early stage R&D. But then like super high demand from all these people who are losing their hair. And I don't know if anybody here has ever gone into like a hair loss forum online, but there's a lot of, whether it's creative, passionate energy or just like, insane energy. There's a lot of energy, either way. And so we sort of saw this like really big, imbalance between, supply for funding, but demand for new solutions. And so we thought, okay, this is something that's really interesting. This could work in a DAO. And so we created a DAO. What it really is, to break it down to like super basics, is in our case, it's a Discord server where everybody who's really passionate about hair loss can pretty much talk. They can come up with hypotheses for why certain types of hair loss happen. They can just upload pictures of like, hey, look, this is how I responded to this treatment. They can ask other people for advice on what they should be taking. All of these things. And in our case, everybody's aligned through the hair token. So the hair token is our governance token. It's how we make all sort of the decisions of the DAO. It's one token, one vote. So the decisions could be, anything from, do you want to fund X study or Y study? Do we want to even create a telehealth in the first place? Like, is it worth spending some of our resources on that? Should we hire this new person? It's all determined by the hair token and the voting on that. And so that's really how we've been able to sort of corral all of that energy that existed in these online forums and actually align this community towards a goal in a way which has proven to be much more productive than everybody trying to just like, I lost 2 more follicles today, posting the picture and sort of freaking out about it online. This has been a much more constructive sort of project that's moving the space forward. And I was actually down in Prospera this past weekend talking with a couple, PhDs who were saying, oh, should I start a bio DAO? And they're like, but it's really just, me and my 3 PhDs who want to work together. I'm like, start a normal company. Like a bio DAO would be way more hassle than it's worth unless you're going to leverage sort of the collective intelligence, like the hive mind, the hair mind of this online community. So from our perspective, the biggest strength of starting a DAO has just been, a lot of researchers will work in small sort of siloed groups, which is, necessary in a lot of cases because of like IP and stuff like that. But anytime you can get a bigger group of smart people working on something, the rate of progress is just going to be faster. And so
it just expands outwards.
It just expands, yeah, sort of like geometrically. And so that's been our experience in terms of it's been.
Andrew, I was just going to ask about that, because not only do you have researchers, but you have customers too, and you also have people that are promoting. For those of us that we're all in the consumer goods space, and to have people that are vocal advocates and champions for you that are in HairDAO that are talking about your products, that's super powerful, right?
Yeah, I mean, and so we've launched Anagen. It's called Anagen. It's the telehealth. We probably launched it about a month ago. I mean, I'm super curious to hear sort of Zack and Carolina's own experiences with direct to consumer, because I think we have a lot of, I definitely have a lot to learn from both of them. We have some really cool levers that we can pull. The least, not the least of which is the fact that the people who have actually helped us develop these drugs are customers themselves. So like you were saying, Ryan, that's definitely very helpful. And then, also we're able to kind of leverage very unique incentives like token rewards and stuff like that for people, who come, shop, at Anagen. So it's sort of, give them, a bigger say in the research going forward if they're using our existing products. Just in terms of like how we got to the consumer side of things, a lot of the other DeSci DAOs are very, are doing a lot of research. They're doing a lot of good research. But it's not going to yield any results for, 5 to 10 years. And so that creates a very sort of dangerous, I would say, potential for like, you could have the best science, but you could still go bankrupt in the short term. And so our thing was, we're running a lot of research, in the short term, but for the long term, I should say. But we need, to give people solutions today, to sort of bridge that gap. And so we created Anagen. It's now live in all 50 states. And we sell, the only proprietary, we sell sort of a wide range of like combination treatments that quite frankly, everybody in our community was like, I want this combination. I want that combination. And then we also sell our first, patented treatment, which was repurposed, T3 thyroid hormones, for hair growth, which we ran that study, a preclinical study at the University of Miami, came out with some really promising sort of results from that would show, there's a high likelihood of regrowing hair. And then we ran a very small, like not, scientifically significant study, but some, actually testing it in patients, myself, my mom, and other people as well. The results from that were promising enough. So the combination of that preclinical research and that observational study is promising enough that physicians are now willing to write those prescriptions off label. And as we keep developing sort of new treatments, and since we opened our lab here in New York, we filed, I think, 4 or 5 more patents for other drugs we could repurpose for hair loss. As we keep generating more data for that, we'll be able to sort of sell those in the telehealth. And that'll be how we do it going forward. There'll be sort of the long term. We have sort of gene targets that we're looking at that would probably require clinical trials, but we also have the shorter term stuff of drugs that can be repurposed. We could sell via the telehealth now. So that's the plan.
I mean, Andrew, it's just incredible. Like when you think about the real vision behind this and your ability to execute and the speed, you're a relatively small company, but you've got, how big is your community in total? Is like,
yeah, I mean, it depends on call it like thousands, probably close to
thousands.
Yeah. Depends on the platform.
So you kind of bootstrapped your customers as well as your researchers, as well as there's just so much talent that you're bringing in. And I think this is why I think there's a lot for all of us to learn when we build, science-based consumer products. How do we build community, reward community, have community get involved, help us with ideating with products, right? Which is, I mean, honestly, the product SKUs that you have are incredible. And the fact that you're also on the crypto side, you're generating revenue, which means now you actually have a token that has real value and a DAO that has real value, and that value can find a way somehow back to the holders of the token themselves. So it's bootstrapping capital as well. So there's just so many magical things about DeSci and having a DAO that is, I think, very new to most scientific entrepreneurs.
Totally.
Right?
Yeah, no, I should say most of our research actually, 2 or 3 of the studies we're running are completely ideated and designed by like anonymous people in our Discord server, who I know their usernames, but I don't actually know who they are. So,
and by the way, I bet that, Carolina and Zack, you both probably have people that have suggested product ideas that there's probably a way to capture that more effectively, right? And to talk directly to your consumers. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, either Carolina or Zack, either one of you.
Yeah, I mean, I think building a product with your community, it's almost like one of the best ways to launch a product because you already have people wanting that solution. I think for us, we went straight to to targeting the main problem that we saw in the market. So we needed that phase of discovery, and required a lot of science. But once we had the product out, the next product or how would people were responding to that product, that's something that we are always listening. And even during the product development, we include our community in the beta testing phase, and then we optimize. We do our studies in the lab, we do studies with our community, and then we do clinical studies because the clinical studies are the most expensive one. So we get as much input as possible before moving to clinical studies, but definitely leveraging the community that's already engaged with your problem or solution.
Yeah, totally.
Zack, how about for you for community?
100%. I mean, I think the thing I find the most is that once I've sort of when I'm having a conversation with somebody, once they get what we're doing, the first thing they want to do is ideate on new product ideas or new things to do with the site. They get very excited about putting on their product hat and okay, here's what you should build, and that's a lot of fun. But I agree with you completely, Carolina, that that when we develop products and we think about how we're going to apply our science to a new problem or to an or whatever, that it is absolutely essential for us to be kind of engaging with the community. But I'm sure there's a lot of challenges in maintaining that community, Andrew. But I'm very inspired by the fact that they're sitting there waiting and they're already passionate about the problems you're trying to solve. We have to go out and try and collect them and validate them every time and get their feedback and filter out whatever weird other stuff they kind of interpret it. You got this prime community already, so I think that's amazing, and it's a big challenge for us. But I completely agree with you, Carolina, that doing that up front, the first stage, and doing it often, throughout every step of the process is so important to ensure that you're not drifting into something that people don't care about, or that isn't, doesn't work or whatever, is so critical. So I'm definitely very inspired by kind of what the process you just described.
They definitely let us know when we veer off track.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
they're like, hey, that's not gonna get us closer to solving hair loss. Like, what the hell are you guys like? Stop doing that. And they're like, oh, okay, sorry.
Nice. That's
That's
awesome.
Yeah, customer feedback is the best, like direct
Yeah.
customer. And honestly, using Discords, Telegrams, those are some tools from DeSci that I think existing scientific consumer product companies could really benefit from. Like having a smaller, tighter knit group of people suggesting ideas, building community, helping with research. So, you know,
Carolina, I should we have a skin channel on our Discord server, and people are like crazy about it. And I told you I've been taking OneSkin for years.
amazing.
I don't have any critiques on the product, but like who knows? Maybe if you need help like with ideating of new business
Yeah,
lines.
no, I want to join that Discord group and see what people are saying for sure. Yeah,
Carolina, maybe some collabs. Actually, Zach and Carolina, there
yeah,
might be some collabs here,
for
right?
sure.
Like,
I was thinking about that.
honestly,
Absolutely. I'm
some
fired up
Yeah.
about what you're doing, Carolina. I first thing I thought was like, I need to call her. Like, yeah.
Yeah.
yeah. So kind of moving on to, I think what a lot of scientists fear the most, commercialization, right? Like that dirty word of like, okay, yeah, we got great science. Now we actually have to make money. The dirty money word. Like for those in the crypto space or business space, it's like, okay, it's obvious things have to make money. For those of us that have been in the realms of science, money is almost a dirty word. It's like, how could you possibly imagine making dirty money off of these beautiful scientific inventions, right? So I don't know if any one of you want to chime in on making money, making products to make money.
It
right?
is definitely
So-
like I feel like it shouldn't be, right, but it is like seen as like antithetical to like the purity of science, to like sell out, and like it's like why are we doing this if we're not like not I mean for me the money is evidence that people are buying, that it's getting into people's hands, right, that it's impacting people and they have access to it. And so and you can have the greatest product in the world, but if you don't productize it and commercialize it correctly, then like you made no impact. You actually wasted your great idea. It's like it's the worst outcome.
And by the way, that's happening across academia everywhere all the time. Like a lot of people don't realize there are more patents for incredible potential products lying on the shelf in academia than there are actually products that have been spun out of great science, like incredible science.
The overlap in the Venn diagram is like nightmare, right? Like the products that are successful are not like, they do not it's not even necessary that they're actually based in like real legitimate science. Like they're great branding, they're great storytelling, right? And then there's great science, and then there's a sliver in the middle, right, where people have done both, right? And those are the ones like you're like, yes, awesome. But unfortunately, the ones that are over here that like science, you talked earlier, Ryan, about like sort of like how do you use science as a differentiator in your marketing. I mean, like unfortunately it's really difficult because everybody is saying like we're science backed, this is science, and it's just crap, a lot of it. And so you have to like kind of like, right, and you have to cut through that noise and be like, no, really, we really are science. And it's hard to do that. So like getting that narrow line in the middle of the overlap is what's so important. I think it's really hard to do.
So and I think one of the interesting insights, Carolina, I think I don't know how much you want to share, but I know somewhat. You gave me an update last time. I was very proud of you, right? Like, so how much do you want to share about like the journey of making the product and then commercially scaling the product and getting to, I would describe it as escape velocity, right? As OneSkin, like being able to survive off of the sales that you make, right? The products that you make.
Yeah. So, basically going back to our journey, like we spent the first 5 years just developing the research, and then eventually we decided to bring this product to the market. And a lot of people doubted that we could do, and we were like a team of scientists, like we didn't know anything about marketing, branding, but again, we had that vision and we thought that we had a shot. And so we created the brand, the packaging, we launched the product without, again, any expertise in how to launch a product. Our website crashed in the first day. Our product, we realized that the first manufacturer that we chose didn't pass the quality control, so we could not ship our product. It was like a nightmare. And this is because we just have got like Peter Diamandis to be our advisor. We launched the product with Peter Diamandis, And so we basically need to go back and say, hey, we're going to start over. And we did it. And then the first year was still pretty hard. We were learning on the fly and learning how to advertise, how to basically, build this digital machine that's behind, D2C brands today. And we did it kind of, well, in the first year we did over 1 million in sales or so, but we were still losing more money than we were making. So by the end of the first year, we had like 1 month of runaway, and if we have not like raised more money, we
By the way,
would.
I think I remember seeing you around then when you had like 1 month. You were like, Ryan, we need to raise money. We need money.
Yeah, exactly. I was like talking to you, what's working. And so luckily I was able to raise a little bit more with our current investors. And then in 2022, we got like two things that really changed our trajectory. So in the same day, David Sinclair mentioned OneSkin in one of his podcasts, like Lifespan podcast, and was completely organic, like we were not expecting. And Tony Robbins launched a book that also included OneSkin. And that really changed our game, drove a lot of traffic. We sold out our products. But looking back, like all of these two things, they were a result of our continuous effort in connecting with the right people in the ecosystem. So these were people that had a high influence and a large following base, and they were always interested in longevity. And they saw that OneSkin was doing something unique. So that helped us really get out of that, death valley phase that's really scary.
that every startup has to go through, by the way.
Yeah.
Every startup has to go through
It's
that.
it's so
and you got, and by
painful.
the way, you got to profitability, right?
Yeah,
Like
we
you are
got in
profitable today.
profitability in 2022, and since then we've been growing like 120% year over year. Like last year we grew 60%. So now we are in a phase that the challenge is still there of keep growing and attracting more customers. But one of the things that we are most proud, and we heard many times, is that we have one of the highest retention rate in the industry. So really showing that the people are seeing the results, and they trust in the brand. I think we created this loyalty with our customers, and it's all because of the science. I think it's us sharing our data, our clinical studies, and obviously people seeing the results. But yeah, just to summarize, in these 4 years, and this is actually a result of 9 years, of research and a lot of efforts. But yeah, today we're in a place that we see it's still early days, but we feel that the OneSkin is definitely pioneering like a new category in the skin like longevity space.
And what I love is now no one can stop you, right? Like you have a profitable business that's growing quickly, and having a scientist at the helm that has a vision for the future with money, right? With profits that can run studies is such a powerful thing. Who knows what type of innovations? And we'll talk about that. We'll talk about the big vision. So I wanted to head over to Zack, and then Andrew will head over to you. But like Zack, I know some of your commercial journey as well, but why don't you share like what's in all this journey, right? From, scientist, you make a product, now you got to like commercialize it, right? Sell it.
Totally. Yeah. And so, yeah, we, like I say, a lot of sort of stumbling along until I came across an application that I found that people were interested in. And that was great. But what we saw was that indication, that next day effect of drinking had its own challenges and like preconceived notions that we had to get over for people. There was a lot of skepticism, but then also you get people over the hump. And then there's this like feeling about like, what does it say about me if I need a product to help me feel better the day after drinking? Do I drink too much? It's like people have these like this like double think where they're like, we'd literally go to a like a happy hour, we'd be and they hang out free samples of beta testing before we launched, and we'd be like, hey, do you want this? This will help you feel better tomorrow after drinking. You're like, oh, I don't need that. And it'd be like they're like literally holding a drink in their hand, and I'd be like, well, like you're drinking. Do you ever kind of like experience the next day effects of drinking? And they'd be like, yeah, sometimes. I'd be like, well, how many drinks usually does that take? And they'd be like, like 3 to 4 drinks. And they'd be like, what drink is that? They'd be like, this is my 3rd drink. And they'd be like, well, like, are you gonna have any more? They're like, yeah, I'm probably gonna have like 2 or 3 more. It's like, well, like, this could help. And they're like, no, I don't need it. Like, because like, it was like, they didn't want to admit it. And it was like so weird to try and like deal with people's psychologies around this stuff. And so we had to learn a lot. And so in the early days, it was like me and my co-founder, Steven, we literally handed out over 10,000 samples by hand, like having conversations with people at like happy hours, like corporate events, like, parties, whatever. And like just getting those conversations over and over and seeing like the skepticism, the humps. And we built our brand based entirely on that feedback and that those kind of like conversations that we had. And then we launched an Indiegogo campaign about 6 months or a year before we were ready to launch the brand to test out like our early initial things. And we launched it and it did not do very well. And that was great because like it basically told us like, okay, this positioning is not good. And so we went back to the drawing board and we like rejiggered it. And what we found was that to get people over the hump initially was all around like trying to get them to like not have to like self-identify with like being the kind of person who like feels bad the day after they drink because it makes them feel irresponsible. And so the idea like, okay, one way to get over that would be to like anchor on special occasions. So we're like, we started seeing like talking about weddings and like this is outside of your normal activities or whatever, and weddings and trips and things like that. And that started to really work. And so when we launched, we really leaned heavy into that. We built our brand very premium, like very high quality so that people didn't feel like to get over the sort of snake hole elements of it. And we leaned heavily into the science again as like a reason to believe. Like the Proudly GMO in a lot of ways was to like get people to believe that this was different than the vitamins that were in like, other products that did nothing. And so that went great. And we launched that in August of 2019, growing month over month. And then right around March of 2020, for some reason, like everything just fell apart. Like, so like COVID hit, nobody's going to weddings, nobody's traveling, nobody's doing any of the special occasions. And we were like, oh no. So we like turned off all of our advertising and stuff because we were like, like we're not going to throw money at this. It's terrible. But what we saw was that even though we didn't advertise at all, like our sales, like there was like 2 weeks where nobody bought anything. And then about 2 weeks later, then we saw the sales just kind of like went back to where they were before. They weren't growing anymore, but they also were just kind of like staying the same. We were getting the same. And so we were like, well, why are people buying it now? And so we started reaching out and talking to customers and be like, hey, like what's, what are you buying it for? What are you using it for? And we saw that basically it was like people had nothing else to do. And so they were drinking and they were just accepting that was the case. But they also were like building home gyms and like building this whole new health routines. And so like this like value prop that like, I want to be able to have a couple of glasses of wine with my significant other at night, but I also want to do my morning workout tomorrow. And this product has helped me do that. And so this balance of like, of enjoying alcohol, but then also like investing in your health and maintaining healthy routines was like this like core and like rock solid foundation for positioning the product. And we readjusted all of our brand and our marketing and positioning to go around that, like this, like maintain your healthy habits, strike this balance. And then like we kind of turned on advertising again towards the end of COVID and things just like took off after that. And so that for me was like kind of for me it was like really fun to go through that process of learning that we didn't actually change anything about the product, right? Like the same ingredients were in it, right? And we didn't change anything about the science. Like all we did was change the way we positioned it to like for people to identify with it in a different way. And it made all the difference. And I know that's so obvious to somebody who's like in product and marketing, but right, like as a scientist, it was like, that was a really amazing like aha moment. It wasn't like, I just thought like, look, you build a great product and it works and you walk away and you make your $1 billion. And like, that's obviously ridiculous. So yeah, it was fun, but
no, it's the product market fit. Like right. That journey, that's the journey, like playing around, seeing what works, what doesn't, what sells, why it sells. And often it's not even, why you originally think people will buy is actually not the reason why they buy. Usually the most interesting conversation I remember having with founders is it's really weird because we have these customers buying and we don't quite understand it. That's some of the most interesting insights you can have. You can be like, oh, okay. Like that kind of like, that's curious. That's what you want to look for, right? When you're looking for signals. So, and I just wanted to kind of flip over to Andrew because, Andrew, your launch is very different, right? Like you launched with a community, right? And so like, how was that different from like these stories that you're hearing around, like looking for product market fit? Like how would you describe that? Because it's a different journey, right?
Yeah, no, it's totally a different journey. I mean, I would say that I feel like we're too early in the journey to like really authoritatively speak to it. I like for us, like I'll say, like speak to like one of the challenges for sure is that we have a super international community, but with like telehealth, we can only sell in the U.S. So that's been like a bit interesting. But also too, like, yeah, no, I feel very lucky that like, you know, a lot of the early orders are essentially like, yeah, like no duh, we sold that because I had 10 people tell me like, if you make that, I'll buy it. And so, that's been really, really useful to sort of, to have as a starting point. But no, I'm super interested just like listening. I mean, I have a wedding this weekend, Zach. So, you know, this is great timing that we hopped on this podcast, today. But, it's, I guess we sort of, the biggest thing that and similar to Zach, the biggest thing that we're trying to get across to people is that like, these aren't sort of just like supplements. These are like real drugs that we're selling. You need a doctor's prescription. And we're sort of in the process right now of like making a lot of that sort of, we've reached our community and now in terms of expanding out, we're trying to make sort of a lot more kind of more mainstream educational content for sort of explaining to people. And I think sometimes, like we were talking about this earlier with the science, it's funny because when you're in the science, you're so excited to get like really in the nitty gritty and like explain like all the details to people. And you're always so disappointed when like nobody really seems to care. And so like we're like, as you're talking to us, like we're in the process of like making a lot of the content, like, to really sort of simplify and explain, like, if this is what your goals are, you should probably take this one. If this is what your goals are, you should probably take that one. It's still, even the community's super helpful, but even with the community, I'm definitely like, you know, it's not just like you put the product out into the world and it just sells itself. Like there's a lot of, you do have to grind it out. And, we are now sort of, we've reached the community and now we're in the phase of sort of trying to expand it and sort of, go more mainstream. So it's been a learning experience and I'm really, just enjoying hearing like Carolina and Zach, speak about it.
Yeah. I imagine.
I'm happy to trade the notes, you know.
For sure. That'd be awesome.
Totally. And I imagine, Carolina, you probably experienced the same, that like, it's like, there's such a fine line, right? Of like, you go too much science, right? But you can't like, and so you want to make that accessible, but like if you go too low, it's fluffy or patronizing or like, you know, whatever, like there's this like very, very narrow little gap in the middle where it's enough science to be authentic and quench people's thirst for an explanation. It's not too much though. And it's not too dumbed down that it sounds patronizing or fake.
Yeah, totally. But for Andrew, I mean, we see with OneSkin, if you can take advantage of before and after, it's one thing that will always catch people's attention. And then you follow with like the science and the credibility. But like, it's the perfect, like, you know, screen stop scrolling. And if you can deliver the benefits, like performs really well.
Yeah. No, we've got a couple of great before and after photos. And so those definitely, we used to try, we definitely realized it's like, you could save your breath and just like put the picture on the screen and that probably, you know, so. Yeah.
By the way, Carolina, that does work in every category, right? So in every CPG category, before and after, especially if it's dramatic, it's transformative, even in pet food. So dog and cat food, we do like a dog with a food allergy with like red rashes on their like white bellies, you know, their pink bellies. And then we do fully white, no pink, no irritation, no rashes, before, after, and performance marketing wise, it works. Like people are just like, I see it before and after, and now sell me on the rest of the benefits. Get me down that funnel to like buy, right? And so it's like, this is the journey that I think all scientific founders, right? Because I think we're all passionate about helping other scientists become entrepreneurs, and especially consumer entrepreneurs, right? Because that's how you get the product out in the world, and you can't rely on large companies. They're just, honestly, they're selling to a different target demographic too. When you look at, you know, the people that are buying at Kroger's or Whole Foods or Walmart, it's a different demographic. Right now, you actually, different messages resonate with different types of people. And so as you scale, and Andrew, this is for, you know, particularly for you, as you're scaling out of your community, you're going to find that there's different communities where you'll just start to resonate, And it's that community that, and then you have to speak to them in the language in which they want to be spoken to. Right. And then you keep thin slicing, and that's how you go from like 1,000 to a couple thousand to like 10,000, and that's how you really start to scale outside of like niches.
Totally.
But you need the niches to get started.
Totally. The super interesting community that somebody suggested me the other day was the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu community, because there's so much steroid usage, I guess, that they all lose their hair. And I was like, oh, I mean, that makes a lot of sense to me. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. And it would make sense. They want to keep, they're probably in amazing shape, and they're like, hey, I want my hair still.
Yeah.
So as I know we're getting close to time. So I just wanted to kind of, if everything works, and Andrew, maybe start with you, your vision. If everything works, in 10 years time, what's the vision you have for HairDAO and for, DeSci in general?
Yeah, totally. So like just high level, it's like fully verticalized pharma. So from the very early stage of like preclinical research all the way to D2C. I think we had a really interesting innovation. I think we realized we were running a lot of our early research with universities and contract research organizations, CROs, and particularly for the hair follicle organ culture model, I realized I was like, we're paying like $260,000 for this study. It's taking 9 to 12 months. This just seems like just ridiculous. And so I went down to the University of Miami to like work on the bench for the very first drug that we developed. And I very quickly realized, I was like, yeah, this is exactly what I thought. It's not checking out. And so now we run all of our research here in New York. That we've brought the cost of the studies already down to like $6,000 a study, and it takes us about 2 weeks. So now we've had that like really, really massive efficiency improvement. And our goal is to essentially just like run as much of these things as possible. A big thing, we get economies of, the big limiting factor, I think, for a lot of ideas, of labs, is the rate of new ideas, because there's only so many people. So when you connect our physical infrastructure to a big Discord server of people who have a ton of ideas, then you're able to run a lot more research through your lab and sort of amortize the fixed costs of your lab across like 100 studies a year versus 3. So it really drives the cost down. I think where we got super lucky is the hair follicle is a mini organ, and it's a super unique mini organ in terms of that. One, it's really scalable. Like, I'll give you 20 hair follicles of mine to test on. I'm not going to really give you like a piece of my liver or like even a chunk of my skin or anything like, it's like, but I'll give I'll give you 20 hair follicles, sure. And so I think, and then within that mini organ, it's something like 33 different cell groups and like 22 or 21 actual cell types. So it's actually a very diverse little mini organ. And so what we've realized is that I think we're going to be able to create this massive human data set using actually like human tissue, which could be super unique, particularly in the world of preclinical research. It's either single cell, where they act differently in isolation than they would within their broader organ, or it's like mouse data. And there's a joke, like, people have regrown hair on mice 1 million times. It's like, there's a joke that like you piss on a mouse and it'll regrow hair. And so, I think we're going to have this really unique human proprietary data set. I think it could actually be more representative of in vivo activity than the two other primary preclinical models, which are either single cell or mice. And at that point, I think we create this really big data set, perfectly coincides with sort of like the rise of LLMs and whatnot. And I think with this unique data set, we'll be able to then make a lot of really interesting insights to, one, get us to solve hair loss. We want to be able to turn slick, bald scalps and make them fully, rejuvenated, fully hairy. But then also, I think we're going to have this big data set, and we'll let it speak to us and tell us like, hey, have you tried this for this indication or this for that indication? And I think, we call it like we built the pipes. We now are able to do preclinical research. We're now able to sell D2C. We're able to run clinical trials. And now it's really just like increasing that throughput and growing from there.
That's incredible, right? You've been able to drop the price, almost 40x, something like that, right? In terms of running studies, and speed, increase the speed dramatically. Like, I think, thinking about DeSci, that's one of the things that's attracted me to DeSci, which is just these like decentralized clinical research organizations. Physical infrastructure can be decentralized. Communities can drive speed. Like, it really is going to be transformational. And it's like, this is why I'm so intrigued by this entire category, the work that you're doing, the work that the other BioDAOs are doing, and the other DeSci groups. Like, I think we're going to see some really, like pumped out science. Blew my mind by seeing like AI tracking the little worms moving around, and when they die and when they don't die. And like, I was like, this is incredible. And it's cheap. They're doing it really, really cheap. And so like, this opens up a whole new world for us to do really decentralized science fast and cheap, which for any scientist, I think for all of us, we want more scientists to become entrepreneurs and build cool things. And so Carolina, what's your vision? Everything works, right? And so now you're running this huge profitable OneSkin. What's happening over here?
Yeah, I mean, I think we still have our goal is to continue to evolve the science. We know that the aging, it's a never-ending kind of, challenge of trying to find ways to tackle and make it more effective. So we have this amazing peptide, but with AI, with like novel discoveries in the longevity space, we want to continue to create, the next generation of our own products. So we're never gonna stop. We want to be the leading company when it comes like to the most effective products to reverse aging the skin. And we want to offer this to everyone that wants to achieve like their healthiest, their best skin regardless of their age. I think one of the area that we want to bring more education is really on the importance of your skin health impact in your overall health. We have studies showing that as your skin ages, there is an increase in inflammation in your skin that can actually impact your systemic levels of inflammation. So by treating your skin, we can actually lower inflammation in our blood. So there is a broader impact in longevity, more so than just, skincare. And with a lot of people that have like wound healing problems and a lot of the skin fragility, we can support people, through those conditions as well. And so our goal again is to really make skin and longevity more connected, but continue to innovate and bring like the most effective products to our community.
Amazing, Carolina, and definitely looking forward to exploring that interface of beyond skin. What are the positive health benefits?
Yeah, we have a clinical
products?
study coming up right now that we already have data supporting that. We saw a decrease in IL-8, and we saw improvement in other several markers in the skin.
And IL-8 is a marker for, is that
inflammation?
For
it's an inflammation. It's one of the main inflammatory markers that is associated with several chronic diseases, dementia, cardiovascular diseases. So only by treating your skin topically, we saw a decrease in IL-8 in your blood.
Well, I'm a OneSkin customer, so I'm looking forward to the innovations that are coming, right? So, Zack, why don't you tell us, like, okay, things are starting to work. You're building out your product set. Like, what's the vision? If everything works, the next 10 years, what do you see happening with ZBiotics and the broader category that you're in?
Yeah, I hope that we are able to, we're trying to build a new category of genetically engineered probiotics. And so we launched our second product last year, which is sugar to fiber, so totally different function than the first product. And we want to launch products 3, 4, and 5, but we also want to lay the groundwork for others, right? Like as well. Like the goal is, I think that there's so much that can be done with really basic, simple biotechnology that is really not being leveraged right now. And I think kind of laying the groundwork in terms of messaging and positioning and like consumer trust, but then also like regulatory frameworks and how we do this responsibly as a community. And so my vision is, I hope 10 years from now, you walk in the grocery store and there's like, there's a whole shelf that's genetically engineered probiotics filled with brands. Obviously, I hope ZBiotics is the most prominent leader in that category, but I hope that it's a big thriving category with like all kinds of things that are improving every element of people's health. There's the opportunity for us to leverage biology to be preventative in terms of our health and wellness and longevity. And it feels like a really easy lever to pull. And so I hope that it gets pulled. I hope that we're able to kind of like lay the foundation to get that.
And Zack, for those people that are not as familiar with the microbiome, the microbiome is a drug factory, right? It is, in theory, if you change the microbiome, you could do things that are preventative, like reduce the risk of cancer, reduce inflammation with all of these genetically modified bacteria, right?
Yeah. I mean, and the
And
goal for us, and like, look, I think there's a lot of different approaches, but the goal for us is to not change your microbiome, right? Because everybody's microbiome is so different, and it's very context dependent on and it's the interaction with your own biology. And so the idea is to sidestep all that complexity, right? Like that you have all this stuff going on in there, and then we can give you a probiotic that we know is safe, that you eat every day, and then just overlay on top of whatever else is happening, well, all the other contexts, just overlay an additional function, and that function is useful to you in some way. And in so doing, like, but yeah, to your point, the microbiome is the right. We're talking in this case about oral probiotics, but I think you could do all kinds. I think we could do, like, skin probiotics, we could do vaginal probiotics, like all kinds of microbiota, right? Microbial communities that are affecting our health. And exactly, they're making neurotransmitters, they're making proteins, they're making all these things that affect our health. And so these are essentially sites where our body accepts that intervention, right? And so these are like these membranes are places where we can have some sort of impact on human health. And so I think that that's really the opportunity, is that, like, this is a site for intervention that is, like, easy to access, that your hundreds of thousands of years of human evolution have optimized for those interactions. And so the idea that we can lay something into that, and have that with modern understanding of how that interaction works, to create some kind of impact, I think is just super exciting.
I mean, I agree. It's incredible. And like the idea of taking some of these other operational models and ideas, like, you're kind of sharing, oh, I'd like others to do this, DeSci might be able to help with that, bringing in further community, using the tools, the Discords, the Telegrams to build community. And so, I think this has been honestly an incredible discussion. I have a feeling the three of you might start collabing on interesting stuff. And we're gonna continue to explore the frontier of, not just science, but how we fund science and how we do science. And that really is the kind of the DeSci layer. And so thank you all for joining. Really appreciate you joining us, and very excited to continue trying more of your new products. I'm already a customer of all three of you, so excited to try out more.